International trade is just trade between people who happen to be in different countries. There's nothing special about it at all. And it adds to wealth by transferring goods from where they're less wanted to where they're more wanted. So for example, sapphires in Burma are much more valuable than pebbles, perhaps. But when they end up in Bond Street, they're worth a lot of money. So that adds to wealth simply by transporting the pebbles.
Yeah, using an extreme case there to make the point. Yeah. So it's sort of a win. It's sort of a win-win for both sides in the trade, because both sides want less the things they've got in their hands than they do of the things each other's got in their hands. Yes.
Yeah. The people in Burma end up with sterling, and they can buy something like whatever they fancy, really.
Yeah. So they end up with money, don't they? Which they've got to get rid of again, haven't they, to make it worth?
Yeah.
They've got to be able to trust that money then, haven't they?
Yes, it needs trustable money, trustworthy money.
Especially if it's international. Anyway, yeah, okay. I think I get the point. Yes.
And that's been going on probably 3,000 or 4,000 years, that kind of trade.
So there's nothing new about it, is what you're saying.
No.
We didn't need a national or international institution to make this work.
No. In principle, it works through trust. A lot of it, the businesses took place within the family. Because of that, families that were far-flung could trust their nephew or their son to go and take the stuff and come back with the money and not cheat.
Even internationally?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you could, does that mean that you could, so people seem to think that everything was barter a long time ago, didn't they, unless we had gold. But I think people used credit notes before that, because they did have that trust, even internationally, through their remote family connections. Is that true?
Yes, I think a lot of gold was transported, but then it wasn't really safe to transport gold, so you'd avoid doing it. So you'd send things like credit notes around, probably.
Yeah. So the cost of transport is part of the production process. Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Including the losses during transport. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Piracy and stuff, bandits, highwaymen.
It's all priced in.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Have we got any of those things happening still, pirates and highwaymen? And maybe those terms are a bit strong, but do we have similar activities going on which are not frowned upon so much now, should I say?
You mean customs?
Well, I mean, that's going to an extreme. Yeah, that could be seen as one if you don't like the tariff,
That's official piracy.
Legalized piracy.
Yeah. The King of Denmark has got a big castle at Elsinore, which is the scene of Hamlet, when he had a lookout tower. And every ship that passed this narrow bit of water into the Baltic had to pay a toll, which was used to support convents. And that was a sort of piracy, really. It caused endless tensions with all the neighbours. And in the end, there was a lot of wars, about 50 years of wars. And Denmark ended up losing the east side of the entrance to the Baltic, so they lost a lot of territory. One of the things about the Elsinore business was as soon as they stopped that blockage, a lot of the trade went to Copenhagen, and the development of Copenhagen began from when the tolls into the Baltic ceased. So really, the King of Denmark was harming his own people.
Okay.
Nice irony, isn't it?
So it was like a tariff, wasn't it? That sort of toll gate was a bit of a tariff.
Yeah, it's a tariff. Yeah. Like the single market, really. No different at all.
Or Mr. Trump's market as well.
Trump's tariffs. Yes, Trump's tariffs.
Yeah.
The funny thing about Trump's tariffs is that people who are criticizing Trump, and I think rightly, said very little often about the European Union doing exactly the same thing.
Why do you think they would only criticize his tariff and not their own?
Trump's a hate figure.
You sure it's not more than that as well? I can understand that's partly it. I think most people, or when I say people, most nations want to be the ones that impose the tariff. Do you know what I mean? Even though it's wrong. and they don't realize it. So they hate it when
Maybe.
somebody else manages to do it, but they can't.
Well, there's still a rosy aura about the European Union.
Mm.
Protects it from criticism.
So what you're saying is it's ironic that he's getting a lot of heat for it, but the EU's had a huge tariff for a long time already.
Yeah.
And the UK adopted one no sooner than it left the EU as well. So the UK has its own tariff too, I think.
Well, the UK had two options under the. There are these things called free trade agreements, which is a contradiction in terms because free trade is simply you let the goods pass without getting in anybody's way. So free trade agreement is an oxymoron. That said, the only thing that the UK could have done was no tariffs from everybody, which would have been an excellent idea.
What do you mean, no tariffs from everybody? It's
You
not.
just let goods be imported from everywhere.
Oh, what you mean?
With
We
no
don't have.
tariff.
The UK abolishes its own tariffs. You mean?
Yeah, just let anybody buy goods from anywhere in the UK.
Yeah.
And then people say, "Oh, well, it would have ruined the farmers." Well, I think that's actually nonsense.
Farmers are already semi-ruined, aren't they, with a tariff?
Well, farming and manufacture is so heavily taxed in
Yeah.
the labour component that it makes it uncompetitive. If the government wants to protect its own industry, the best thing it could do would be to stop farming it with heavy tax on labour.
Yeah.
But that said, the farmland wouldn't disappear. It would go over to other uses, possibly recreational forestry. Some of it will be built on because Labour wants to build 1.5 million homes somewhere, so they've got to go somewhere, I suppose. But the other thing that British farmers could do is go niche because conditions for producing high quality stuff are good in Britain.
Yes.
And then people would be buying chlorinated chickens, would be flooding into the country.
Well, I saw. Yeah, I know. I've seen all the propaganda about that and all the chemicals they use in American food. But
well,
yeah,
I don't fancy the idea myself.
Well, I don't either. Yeah.
No, it doesn't sound very nice.
No. Well, you've only got to look at American cars to see how poor quality their goods and services are. They're just rubbish. Yeah. Trump complains that no one buys American cars, and I'm going, but they're, Anyway, sorry. I'm not against Trump, by the way, but I'm thinking you should realize by now.
but people aren't forced to buy chlorinated chickens.
True.
I mean, if they're that bothered, they'll look on the label and pass them up so they won't get sold. And if they're worried about being sold in restaurants, they won't take that bit of the menu. I think there's an assumption that people are really stupid and don't know what they're buying. Well, of course, if you protect them too much, they become stupider and stupider.
So I was going to say people could be smart, but they choose not to be a lot. Okay.
Well, if you protect them from the consequences of their decisions, they tend to get less smart as time goes on.
That's the mollycoddling nanny state view, isn't it, politically? Yeah. The dependency culture and all that. I was watching a film yesterday about trains, funnily enough. I know you'll like this. And it was going through, this guy got an expensive train for 2 days across Japan, the whole of Japan. I'm looking at that. He said, look at that lovely farmland as he looked down into a huge valley, a flat valley. And it was all separated up into very small fields like we used to have in the 19th century here. And they seem to be fine. Do you see what I'm saying about farms? You could do that in the UK, couldn't you? It doesn't have to be done industrially to make a profit if people want to buy it.
I mean, there are some very good British agricultural produce is very high quality. For example, barley, English barley, seems to be among the best in the world.
Is it really?
Beer making.
Okay, yeah.
Premium price. And of course, the EU tariffs has made it more expensive.
Yeah.
Which isn't, again, not very smart.
Yeah. So there seems to be this thing about the tariff, generally speaking, there seems to be a sort of hidden belief that it's good to protect the home industry. Yeah. But what you're saying is it's a disaster to protect the home industry. This seems to be what you're trying to say.
Not quite. Stop punishing home industry with heavy taxes on wages and goods and services, and the tariffs themselves
Yeah,
damage the home industry because a lot of the stuff that they use has to be imported.
yeah, that's true. So that's a price rise, isn't it, really, rather than inflation that
Mhm.
induces a price rise. Okay. Mm,
Tariffs have the same effect as increasing the transport costs.
okay.
The tariffs are good. Somewhere like remote islands, Tristan da Cunha, should be very prosperous places because the
Why?
ships only cruise twice a year. So it's very difficult to import anything. That must be really good for them.
So you could say the same from putting a tariff. You could have a border tariff on the Scottish border to England, couldn't you? And you could
Yeah.
say,
Well, they probably will. They will if they join the
yeah,
EU. There'll be a tailback on the A1 all the way back to the
but they'll.
outskirts of Newcastle.
But this is what I'm saying. It comes back to my um, thoughts about why people believe it's good for us when it can't possibly be a good thing. We've come here to talk about why not, rather than just to make a claim to it. So what's
I haven't
next?
thought it through.
Yeah. So what's next on your list of things to talk about then?
Balance of payments, that's the difference between two large numbers which aren't very accurately
Yeah,
known anyway.
they're always
That
dynamic.
information's
They're
not,
always in flow, aren't they? Okay. Hmm.
that information's not worth collecting. The people who do it should be told to stay at home. The system is self-balancing because the deficit country finds the value of its currency going down, so its imports become expensive, its exports become cheap. So it should be self-balancing.
Yeah.
That's assuming that the country's got something to sell, which
Hmm.
of course, if you destroy your manufacturing, it hasn't, and then people go and buy up real estate instead.
Why would they do that? Good question.
Nothing else to do with the money.
Yeah, because they don't want the goods because they're rubbish or too
Oh,
expensive for the same quality. So there's only one thing left to buy, which is the valuable real estate. Yeah. Right.
yeah.
Why does that suddenly become more valuable, though? Why didn't they buy it in the first place?
Well, there were goods to buy
Okay.
once, but when there's nothing much left, it becomes real estate.
Yeah.
Is there any difference between paying rent to foreigners or paying it to the banks as mortgage interest or paying it to your fellow countrymen?
Well, I mean, given that we don't agree that borders make any difference apart from to stand in the way of trade, no,
It's no fundamental difference.
no. Yeah, this is the problem, isn't it? We're talking about people believe that tariffs are good because they imagine that borders actually make a difference without recognizing that the borders only make a difference because by implication, they block trade. You know, that
Yeah.
what's happening because the border blocks trade. So the whole of what I've just said hasn't really been integrated into most people's minds when they think about it, even professionals, quite astonishingly. So balance of payments then, what more to say about that? You went through that quickly. Is there anything more to say about that yet?
The whole view on international trade needs to change. The silly things that Trump's doing maybe bring this to focus, but to judge from comments that are being made, it isn't happening. Have you got any comments?
I think, although I've got no evidence to support it, but I think that Trump is doing this for tactical reasons in a bigger strategy. Because he's got this new power, yeah. And I'm not against Trump per se, compared to, I just think he's the same as all the rest. But I think he's using it very tactically and very well, actually, because it's succeeding, isn't it? Even though we would disagree that applying a tariff works for your home country, yeah. But he's threatening to apply it, and people are caving into him. And I would say, well, if it was me as prime minister, I'd say, oh, brilliant! You're creating a block to your own goods and services, exports and imports. Fantastic. Put it up as high as you can, because that'll be better. We'll become more competitive now. But the thing is, I personally think he knows that, and he's using it as a tactical weapon to get people to act, really. You know, why the people that are caving into it, like Canada, Mexico, Europe possibly soon too, why other countries are caving in, I don't know. That would signal they don't really understand it as well. But I can't believe that really either. But anyway, we'll never know, will we really? what they're really thinking. I think
Okay.
I think other countries are worried because they can't hold out as long as a big country like America during a transition where that tariff did get applied. And so I think Trump is gambling. He's taking a risk because he's a businessman. He's saying we can hold out longer. If they take this, which I don't really want them to do, but if they take this, it'll be better for us still because we can hold out under those bad conditions longer than the transitional costs for that country, because there will be extra costs even if you eventually become better off. Yeah. So I think they're going, we can't hold out for more than a few months with that sort of transition. I don't know. That's what I think.
I think that sums it up. All right, should we finish there?
Yeah, so it's a monopoly position again. So you've got the power to
Yeah.
do that again. Anyway, okay, there you go.
All right, okay.
Let's put that on stop.